I never saw it coming. Never once did I think that my life, as I knew it, could change in a single moment. I wasn't a man who typically felt insecure about relationships. I didn't obsess over every little detail, didn't go searching through her phone, didn't monitor her every move. I believed in trust, but I also believed in loyalty, and that was something I thought we both shared. But then, there was that night. It wasn't supposed to be anything special, just an ordinary evening, a little date night after a long week of work. She'd been acting a little off lately, but I thought maybe it was just the stress of her new job or the pressure she was facing. I didn't question it at first. We all get busy, right? I was meeting her at a local bar we used to go to. Nothing fancy, just a place we could unwind, chat, and have a few drinks. When I walked in, I didn't see her immediately. It was a Friday night, so the place was packed, the hum of conversation filling the air. I didn't think much of it when I saw her phone lying on the table. Maybe she'd been texting or answering a work email. It wasn't unusual for her to be on her phone when I wasn't around. But then, the bartender pointed me toward the back of the bar, where I saw her, laughing. Laughing in a way I hadn't heard in a while. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Who doesn't laugh when they're out with friends? But as I moved closer, my feet suddenly felt like they were dragging. The sound of her laughter became louder, sharper, more infectious than I remembered. It didn't sound like the laughter of someone who was just casually talking with friends. It sounded intimate, like something shared between two people who had shared a lot more than just a few drinks. And that's when I saw him. He was sitting next to her, his hand resting casually on her knee. The sight of it made me freeze in place. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether to walk over and confront them or to just leave the bar and pretend I hadn't seen anything. But I couldn't walk away. Not yet. I stayed hidden behind a pillar, watching as the two of them continued to talk, heads close together. Every now and then, they'd glance up and make eye contact, and I could see something I hadn't noticed before, a closeness that I hadn't shared with her in a long time. It wasn't just friendly banter. It wasn't just two people catching up. It was something else, something deeper, and I could feel it. I don't know how long I stood there, staring, but eventually, the voice inside me snapped out of my stupor. You need to know what's going on. I couldn't stand the uncertainty. I had to know. I had to confront this. So, I walked up to them. And when she saw me, her expression shifted, not in shock, not in surprise, but in something else. Guilt. Hey, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't expect to see you here. She looked up at me, her smile faltering for a split second. Oh, hey, I didn't know you were coming by tonight. The guy beside her, who had barely acknowledged me until then, looked me up and down. Oh, you must be the boyfriend, he said with a slight smirk. His tone was casual, almost dismissive, and it made my blood boil. I nodded, keeping my cool. I didn't realize you two were so close. I wasn't sure if it was the directness of my words, or the way I stood there, but she suddenly looked uncomfortable. She shifted in her seat, her hand now awkwardly placed on her lap. David, it's not what you think. The guy chuckled, the sound grating on my nerves. Yeah, man. Don't worry about it. We're just having a drink. No harm done. I wanted to rip his smug grin off his face, but instead, I forced myself to look at her. Just having a drink? Really? It looks a lot more than that. Her eyes darted from me to him and back again, as if searching for an escape route. I could feel the tension in the air thickening, like something was about to snap. But instead of admitting anything, instead of explaining herself, she turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. David, you're being dramatic. It's just a drink. We're friends. That word again, friends. A word that had become a dagger in my heart over the past few months. She had used it to describe him so many times before, as if it explained everything. But I wasn't sure I believed it anymore. I'm not being dramatic, I said, my voice quieter now, but laced with an edge I didn't intend. I just don't understand why I wasn't invited. Why didn't you tell me you were meeting up with him? At that, the guy finally stood up, his hand lingering on her shoulder for a moment longer than necessary. Look, man, we're just hanging out. No need to get upset. But I was upset, and not just because of the way he was talking to me, but because of how she was reacting. She wasn't defending me. She wasn't telling him to back off. She wasn't even saying anything to explain the situation. She just sat there, staring at the table, her fingers fiddling with the edge of her drink. I could feel it. The distance. The space between us, widening with every passing second. And suddenly, I wasn't sure I knew who she was anymore. "What's going on here, Sophia?" I asked, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "What's really going on with you two?" Her face turned pale, and for a split second, I saw a flicker of something: regret, fear, maybe guilt, before it was replaced by the usual mask. She looked up at me, meeting my gaze for the first time since I walked in. "I don't want to talk about this here," she said softly. But I wasn't going to back down. I wasn't going to leave without answers. "Then where?" I asked. "When?" Her eyes flickered to Greg, him, and I saw her hesitate. I saw her choose. "Tomorrow," she said quietly. "We'll talk tomorrow." Tomorrow. The word hung in the air like a weight, heavier than anything I had ever felt. Tomorrow? Did she even know what she was saying? Or was it just a way to delay the inevitable? But I couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow would change everything. I went home that night with more questions than answers, the words, "we'll talk tomorrow," echoing in my mind over and over. Tomorrow. It felt like a lifetime away, yet also like it was rushing toward me, unavoidable. I didn't know what I was expecting from that conversation. Maybe an apology, an explanation, maybe even an acknowledgement of everything I'd seen in her eyes, in the way she looked at him, in the way she didn't look at me. But all I had was uncertainty, the kind that eats away at you when you can't figure out whether you're just paranoid or if you're actually seeing something real. The next day dragged on. I went through the motions at work, trying to focus on tasks, but all I could think about was what Sophia was doing. Where was she? Who was she with? Was it really just nothing between her and him? Or was there something I wasn't seeing? The more I thought about it, the more I began to doubt my own instincts, which, up until now, had always guided me through life. I prided myself on my ability to trust, to know when things felt right. And yet, this whole situation felt like a gut punch. By the time evening rolled around, I found myself staring at my phone, waiting for her to reach out. Maybe she'd been thinking about what happened last night, too. Maybe she realized how strange it all was, how out of place Greg had been. But as the minutes passed, the screen stayed dark. No messages, no calls. She'd been distant like this before, but this time felt different. And that feeling of dread settled in again. At around 7 p.m., I couldn't take it any longer. I texted her, asking if we could talk. Just one message. Nothing demanding, nothing accusatory. I didn't want to seem desperate, but I needed answers. It didn't take long for her to reply. A simple, "I'll be home in an hour. We'll talk then." The relief that washed over me was temporary at best. We both knew that the conversation we were about to have was going to change everything. But what exactly would it change? That was the question I couldn't answer. I spent the next hour pacing around my apartment. I tried to keep my mind occupied with anything else. TV, music, anything, but nothing worked. I kept replaying last night over and over in my head. Every laugh, every touch, every smile exchanged between Sophia and Greg. The way she'd looked at him, the way she'd let him invade our space like it was nothing. It wasn't the first time something like that had happened, but it was the first time it had bothered me so much. When the door finally opened and she walked in, I could see it in her face. The hesitation, the guarded expression. She didn't even look like the same person who had kissed me goodbye just a few days ago. She looked different. "David," she said softly, closing the door behind her. "I know you're upset, and I know I haven't been myself lately. But please, just hear me out." I nodded, my jaw tight. "I'm listening," I replied, keeping my voice calm despite the turmoil inside me. She sat down on the couch, looking at her hands for a moment before meeting my gaze. "I don't want you to think that I don't care about you. I do, I really do." She paused, her eyes searching mine. "But last night, you were being unreasonable." Unreasonable? The word stung more than I thought it would. "How? You're telling me that it's unreasonable to feel uncomfortable when the person I'm with spends more time laughing and talking to someone else, someone who's not me? Someone who clearly has a history with you that goes beyond friendship? Is that what you're saying?" Sophia's face faltered, and she quickly glanced down again. "I never meant to hurt you. It's just that Greg, he's been a part of my life for so long. He's been there for me when I didn't have anyone else. He's just always been there, you know? And it's not like you think. It's not like that at all." "Then what is it, Sophia?" I couldn't hold it back anymore. "What is it, if it's not like that? I don't understand. I need to understand." She took a deep breath, as if gathering the courage to say something she had been holding back. "It's just that, lately, I've been feeling, I don't know, lost. Like I don't know where I belong anymore. And Greg, he's been there for me, David. He's been there in ways you haven't. He gets me in a way that you don't. And I don't know how to explain it. But, she trailed off, looking for words that didn't seem to come. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. So what? You're saying that's enough for you to what? Drift away from me? From us? Sophia shook her head quickly, as if trying to convince herself as much as me. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I've been struggling, and I don't want to lose you, David. But at the same time, I don't know how to balance everything. I don't know how to balance Greg and you, and my own feelings. I feel like I'm drowning. I felt like the ground had just slipped out from under me. This wasn't what I had expected to hear. She was telling me she felt lost, like she didn't know where she belonged, and that Greg, of all people, had been the one to fill that void. It wasn't just some friendly catch-up. It wasn't just nothing between them. It was more than that, and I had no idea how to deal with it. How could I compete with someone who had been there for her in ways I never knew? You're telling me, I said slowly, that you've been leaning on him for support, when you should have been leaning on me? Her eyes flickered, a flash of guilt crossing her face before she quickly wiped it away. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, David. I never meant for it to be this way. But you have to understand, it's not easy for me either. I've been feeling so disconnected, so lost in everything that I didn't know where to turn. I sat there, trying to make sense of it all. But every word she said only created more questions in my mind. Was this truly just about her feeling lost? Or was there something deeper going on? Was there something she wasn't telling me? And Greg, what role did he really play in all of this? I don't know what to do, Sophia. I finally admitted, my voice breaking. I don't know how to fix this. And in that moment, I realized that maybe the problem wasn't just her and Greg. Maybe it was me too. Because I was losing her. And I didn't know how to get her back. I felt like I was suffocating. Each word Sophia spoke seemed to push me further away from the person I thought I knew. Her eyes, once warm and full of trust, now seemed distant, like she was speaking to someone she barely recognized, someone she barely knew. The silence between us was heavy, pressing in on me from all sides. I wanted to reach out, to fix things, but how do you fix something when you don't even understand what's broken? I sat there for a moment, trying to process everything. It was hard to focus on her words when all I could hear in my head were the memories, the moments when things felt right, when it was just the two of us against the world. The nights we spent talking for hours, the adventures we had, the quiet moments when we'd just sit together, comfortable in each other's company. I couldn't reconcile that with the woman sitting in front of me now, someone who had clearly distanced herself from me, someone who was looking to someone else for the emotional support I thought was mine to give. I don't know what to do with all of this, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. You're telling me that I'm not enough, that I'm not the one you turn to when things get hard. That's what it feels like. It feels like I've been replaced by him. Sophia looked down at her hands, her fingers trembling slightly. She didn't speak for a long time, and I could tell that she was grappling with something. Something she hadn't said yet, something that she wasn't ready to admit. My chest tightened as the silence stretched on. The room felt colder, like we were no longer in sync, no longer in the same place. The weight of her words from the night before, the uncertainty, the indecision, hung in the air, suffocating us both. I haven't been honest with you, David, she said, her voice breaking the silence. And I don't know how to say this without making everything worse, but she trailed off, as if trying to find the right words. But what? I pressed, leaning forward, my heart racing. What is it, Sophia? What have you been keeping from me? She took a deep breath, her eyes flickering with what I could only describe as regret. I didn't just start turning to Greg recently. I didn't just start leaning on him for support out of nowhere. It's been going on for a while now. And she hesitated again, like she was struggling to say something that had been weighing on her for months. And I think I've developed feelings for him. More than just feelings of friendship. The words hit me like a slap to the face. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I'd never expected to hear that. Not in a million years. Feelings? For him? The one person I had always felt uncomfortable around. The one person who seemed to have more access to her heart than I ever did. It felt like the ground beneath me had crumbled away, leaving me in a free fall, unable to catch my breath. You're telling me, I whispered, my voice shaking, that you've been in love with him? Sophia didn't answer right away, but the way she looked at me said everything. There was no denial, no quick reassurance. She simply nodded, her eyes filled with a mix of guilt and sorrow. I didn't want to admit it to myself, she said softly, but it's true. I've tried to ignore it, tried to push it down, but it's been there for a long time now. I've been so confused, and I didn't know what to do. I could feel my heart breaking in real time. Every part of me wanted to scream, to demand answers, to lash out, and tell her everything I was feeling. But the shock was so overwhelming, I couldn't form the words. How could she do this? How could she let this happen? And how had I missed it? I thought I could keep pretending, she continued, her voice barely audible now. I thought I could continue loving you and still keep Greg in my life, but it's not fair to you. It's not fair to either of us. And I've realized that. But I didn't know how to say it. I didn't know how to face you, knowing what I was feeling. Her words hung in the air, sharp and cold. I could barely process what she was telling me. How long had this been going on? How long had she been harboring feelings for someone else? Someone who was clearly more than just a friend. The anger was starting to build inside me, but so was a deep sense of hurt. I never wanted to hurt you, David, she said quietly. And I'm so sorry for everything. I didn't want to lose you, but I also can't keep pretending that I don't have these feelings. I can't keep pretending that nothing has changed. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. I don't know what to say to that, Sophia. I don't know how to process this. My voice was tight, a mix of disbelief and pain. You've been telling me that everything is fine, that I'm being dramatic, and all this time, you've been hiding this from me? You've been in love with him? She stood up too, but she didn't reach for me, didn't try to touch me or console me. She just stood there, looking at me with wide eyes. I'm sorry. I really am. I never meant for it to go this far. But now that I've admitted it, I can't go back to pretending it's not there. The room felt colder, like everything that had once felt comfortable between us was slipping away. I couldn't look at her anymore. I couldn't stand the sight of her. The woman I thought I knew was no longer the same. She had changed, and I had missed it. I had been blind to everything that was happening right in front of me. I need time, Sophia, I said, my voice low and final. I need time to think. I don't know if I can even look at you the same way after this. She nodded slowly, tears welling up in her eyes, but she didn't say anything more. She didn't try to stop me, didn't try to beg me to stay. She just stood there, quietly, like she knew that what she had just revealed had already changed everything. I walked out of the room, my mind spinning, my heart breaking. I didn't know where to go, what to do, or even what to feel anymore. All I knew was that nothing would ever be the same again, and I wasn't sure if I would ever be able to forgive her for what she had done. I left the apartment without saying another word, stepping into the cool night air like I was trying to escape the weight of everything that had just been laid out between us. It was hard to breathe, like my chest was too tight, my mind too full. As I walked aimlessly down the street, my thoughts swirled uncontrollably, and I couldn't seem to focus on anything. Sophia's confession echoed in my mind. She had feelings for Greg, and no matter how many times I replayed the words in my head, I couldn't make sense of it. How had it come to this? How had everything I thought I knew about our relationship shattered so quickly? I couldn't understand how she had let herself get to this point, how she had let herself develop feelings for another man. My stomach churned at the thought of Greg being so close to her, being the one she turned to when things got tough, being the one who could apparently offer her something I couldn't. I didn't know how long I walked for. It could have been hours for all I knew. The city was quiet at night, the streets empty except for the occasional car passing by. My phone buzzed a few times in my pocket, but I didn't check it. I didn't want to hear from her. Not yet. I wasn't ready to face her again. The anger I felt was too raw, too fresh. I needed time to process everything, to figure out what I was going to do. But no matter how much I tried to ignore it, a gnawing thought kept coming back. It was the same question that had been circling in my mind since she first admitted how she felt about Greg. Why didn't she tell me sooner? Why had she let me keep living in this illusion that we were fine, that everything was as it should be, when deep down, she was already slipping away from me? Eventually, I found myself sitting on a bench in a park, the night air cold against my skin. I hadn't realized it, but the tears had started to fall, slowly at first, then faster as the full weight of what Sophia had said sank in. I wasn't crying because I wanted to. I wasn't crying because I missed her, at least not yet. I was crying because I had been blindsided by a truth I hadn't seen coming. I had thought we were in this together, thought we were building something real. But now, It felt like all of it was built on sand, ready to crumble beneath me. I took out my phone, staring at the screen for a long time, tempted to call her, to ask her to explain everything, to make it make sense. But I knew I wasn't ready for that conversation. Not yet. I wasn't sure if I ever would be. Instead, I went home and tried to sleep. I told myself that sleep would help me clear my head, that the morning would bring answers. But sleep didn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sophia and Greg together. I saw them laughing, talking like they had known each other forever, like they shared a connection that I could never understand. And the more I thought about it, the more I started to question everything. Had I been blind this whole time? Had I ignored the signs that something wasn't right between us? Had she been slipping away, and I just hadn't seen it? By morning, I was exhausted, physically, emotionally, mentally drained. I had no idea what I was supposed to do next. Part of me wanted to walk away from it all, to end things with her and never look back. But another part of me, the part that had loved her so deeply, wanted to believe that we could fix this, that she was still the woman I thought she was, the woman I had fallen in love with. At 9 a.m., my phone rang. It was her. I let it ring for a few seconds before answering. "David, please." Her voice came through, fragile and desperate. "I need to see you. Please, we need to talk." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. We need to talk. How many times had I heard that in the last 24 hours? How many times had she said those words? And how many times had they changed everything between us? I wanted to scream at her, to tell her to leave me alone, but the pain in her voice stopped me. She sounded so broken, so lost. "Where?" I asked, my voice thick. "Where do you want to meet?" There was a pause, a breath, before she answered. "I don't care. Anywhere. Just please come. I can't do this alone." I didn't want to go. I didn't want to see her again, not after everything. But I knew I had to. I knew I couldn't leave things like this. I needed closure. Whether I wanted it or not, I had to know what would happen next. We met at a coffee shop downtown, the same one where we'd had our first date. It felt like a cruel joke, the place where we'd laughed and talked for hours, where everything had felt so easy and natural. Now the place where everything was falling apart. She was already sitting at a table when I arrived, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. She didn't look like the woman I had fallen in love with. She looked like a stranger, someone I didn't recognize. I didn't know how to approach her, what to say, so I just sat down across from her, waiting for her to speak. "I'm so sorry, David," she said softly, her voice shaky. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know how to fix it." I looked at her, the pain in my chest growing. "You should have told me sooner, Sophia. You should have told me before it got to this point." I paused, feeling the sting of those words. "You had feelings for him, and you didn't tell me. Why? Why keep me in the dark?" She looked down at her coffee cup, her hands trembling as she wrapped them around the warm mug. "I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't know how to say it. And honestly, I thought I could just ignore it, that I could keep everything the way it was. But I was wrong. I was lying to myself, and I was lying to you." I felt my heart sink further. "But why Greg? Of all people, why him?" She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes again. "I don't even know anymore. It just happened." And I tried to push it away, tried to convince myself it was nothing, but it wasn't. It wasn't nothing, David. And I think you deserve someone who can give you all of themselves, not someone who's divided. The silence between us was deafening. I couldn't find the words to respond. How do you respond to that? How do you process the fact that the person you thought you knew, the person you trusted, had been slowly slipping away, letting someone else take their place in her heart? "Do you love him?" I finally asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she wiped her eyes, trying to steady herself. "I don't know," she whispered. "But I know that I've lost you, and that scares me more than anything." I couldn't look at her anymore. I couldn't stay there, listening to her try to explain something I didn't want to hear. So I stood up, my hands shaking. "I can't do this, Sophia. I need space. I need time to figure out if I even want to fix this." She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. "Please, David, don't go. Don't leave me." But it was already too late. The distance between us had already grown too wide. There was no turning back now. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice cracking as I walked away. I can't." I didn't know where I was going. I just walked. My feet moved almost mechanically, as if my body was trying to put as much distance between me and the pain in my chest. Every step I took felt like I was walking farther and farther away from the life I had thought I knew. I kept replaying our conversation over and over in my head. The way she'd looked at me, the tears in her eyes, the raw honesty in her voice. She'd admitted everything, everything that had been festering for months. And somehow, it still didn't feel real. Sophia had feelings for Greg. It wasn't just a passing attraction. It was something deeper, something she had kept hidden for so long. And I had been blind to it. I had been blind to the changes in her, the distance that had crept in between us. I thought I was the one she turned to when things got tough, the one who could be her anchor. But now I realized that I had never really been enough. The hardest part of it all wasn't that she had developed feelings for another man. It was that she had hidden it from me. She had lied to my face, pretended everything was fine while, behind my back, she was falling for someone else. And I couldn't even pinpoint when it all started. Had it been when we first met? Or had it happened gradually, without either of us noticing the slow unraveling of our connection? I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to face that apartment, that place that had once felt like a sanctuary, now just a cold, empty shell. So, I kept walking, not caring where my steps led me. It wasn't until I found myself sitting in a park that I realized how late it had gotten. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the empty benches. The chill in the air mirrored the numbness inside me. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, trying to fight off the cold, but it didn't help. The cold wasn't coming from the outside. It was coming from within. I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the contact that seemed to haunt me the most, Sophia. I should have blocked her by now. I should have cut ties completely, but a part of me was still holding on to hope. That tiny, foolish part of me that still wanted to believe we could fix things, that I could somehow fix her. But I knew it wasn't that simple. There was no going back from this. She had made her choice, and in doing so, she had shown me who she really was. I went through my messages, scanning for anything that could give me some kind of clarity, some kind of direction. But all I found were words that now seemed hollow, meaningless. The sweet texts, the "I miss you" messages, the promises to always be there for each other. None of it felt real anymore. It was like I had been living in a dream, and now I was awake, surrounded by the shattered pieces of everything I thought we had. I thought about calling a friend, someone who could help me make sense of all this, but I knew it wouldn't help. No one could fix this. Not even my closest friends could erase the images that kept flashing in my mind. Sophia and Greg, laughing together, sharing moments I thought belonged to me. I didn't need advice. I didn't need comfort. I needed answers. But there were no answers coming. Only more questions, more confusion, more pain. Then my phone rang. It was her again. I stared at the screen, my heart racing, my finger hovering over the answer button. Part of me wanted to pick up, wanted to hear her side of the story, wanted to understand what had led to this. But another part of me knew that hearing her voice would only tear open the wound even more. I pressed decline and put the phone back in my pocket, burying my emotions deep, deep inside. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready to hear her try to explain herself, to tell me that she didn't mean to hurt me, that it was all just a mistake. I didn't want to hear it. But even as I tried to shut her out, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was making the wrong decision. Was I running away from the pain, or was I actually running away from the one person who could make it all better? Was there still a chance for us? Or had that ship already sailed? As the night grew darker, I realized I couldn't keep avoiding the inevitable. I couldn't keep pretending that everything would magically go back to normal. I had to make a choice, stay and fight for what we had, or walk away and never look back. The choice was simple, but it didn't make it any easier. I finally stood up from the park bench, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. It felt like I was walking into a storm, one I couldn't control, but I knew that if I didn't face this head on, I would never have peace. I needed closure. I needed to understand if there was any part of her left that still cared for me, or if, in the end, I had just been another chapter in her life that she was ready to close. With one last look at the park, I pulled out my phone and dialed her number. This time, when she answered, there was no hesitation, no second guessing. I was done running. "Sophia," I said, my voice steady but breaking inside. "We need to talk." Her voice on the other end was soft, almost too soft. "I know. I'm so sorry, David. Please, let me explain everything." I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. "I'm listening. But this time, I need the truth. No more lies." No more excuses. And with that, everything that had been building inside me, the anger, the confusion, the hurt, all came rushing to the surface. It was time to find out whether the woman I had loved still existed, or if she had been replaced by someone I no longer recognized. The phone call was agonizing. Each word felt like it had the power to either heal or destroy, and I wasn't sure which way this would go. The fact that I had even dialed her number after everything that had happened seemed like a decision I would later regret. But it wasn't just for her, or even for me. It was for closure. The questions were too loud in my mind, buzzing like a constant static, and I needed the truth. No more uncertainty. No more wondering what could have been, what was hidden, or what I had missed. Sophia, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, yet somehow cutting through the tension that hung thick in the air. I don't know if I'm ready for this, but I need you to be honest with me. Completely honest. I can't keep going back and forth in my head about what's real and what's not. She was quiet for a moment. I could hear her breath on the other end, slow and shaky. I imagined her standing there, probably pacing, probably trying to gather her thoughts, just like I was. But there was no escaping the conversation now. I know I hurt you, David, she said finally, her voice a mix of sadness and regret. I never meant to. You have to understand that. I didn't respond immediately. I wasn't sure what to say to that. She had hurt me, yes. But it wasn't the kind of hurt you could easily mend with words. What she had done, what we had allowed to happen, couldn't be undone. It wasn't just one mistake. It was months of secrets, of a growing distance between us that I hadn't seen until it was too late. You told me last night that you have feelings for Greg. I continued, trying to stay calm, to keep my voice steady. And I need to know, was it always him? Or was there ever a point where it was just us? Where you looked at me and saw the future we were supposed to have? Another silence, this one stretching longer than the last. She wasn't avoiding the question. I knew that. She was just trying to figure out how to give me an answer that wouldn't destroy what was left of the connection we had. I don't know, she finally admitted. I didn't want to feel this way. I didn't want to hurt you. But things with Greg, they've always been different. He's always been there. When we started dating, I thought I could separate the two things, Greg and you. I thought I could have both, but it's not that simple. I thought I could keep pretending that my feelings for him didn't mean anything. But that wasn't true. It became something real. The confession hit me like a punch to the stomach. The way she said it, so matter-of-factly, as though it was just another part of her life I wasn't supposed to question. I knew that Greg had always been a presence in her life, but I never imagined it would come to this. I had always convinced myself that he was just a friend, a harmless friend. But the truth, her truth, was far worse. She wasn't just emotionally entangled with him. She was in love with him. I ran a hand through my hair, feeling a cold sweat break out across my forehead. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I knew that wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't give me what I needed, what I had always wanted from this relationship. All I wanted was her honesty. But now, hearing it, it was almost too much. Too raw, too real. Did you ever love me, Sophia? I asked, the words escaping before I could stop them. Or was I just someone to pass the time with while you figured it out? Her breath caught on the other end of the line. David, that's not fair. Of course, I loved you. But love isn't always enough. Sometimes people change. Sometimes they realize that they've been holding on to something that isn't real anymore. I didn't want to fall for Greg. I didn't mean for it to happen. It wasn't fair. She was right. I had every right to feel betrayed, to feel like I had been used, but deep down, I knew that the hurt was coming from something deeper than just her relationship with Greg. It was coming from the fact that I had been living a lie. I had been holding on to a version of us that was never really there. And now, as she was confessing the truth, I could feel the last vestiges of trust one had in her slipping away. You don't get to decide when it's over, I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts. You don't get to just wake up one day and say, I don't love you anymore. You don't get to say you loved me when it's clear you were already in love with him. There was another long pause on the line, a painful silence that stretched between us like a chasm that neither of us could bridge. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, almost broken. I didn't want to hurt you, she repeated, this time with a desperation that I hadn't heard before. I'm sorry for everything, David. I never meant for it to go this far. I couldn't stop it. I didn't know how to stop it. I don't know what to do anymore. I closed my eyes, trying to steady myself. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a way back from this. But I knew it wasn't that simple. Love wasn't enough to rebuild what had been torn apart. No matter how sorry she was, no matter how many times she said she hadn't meant to hurt me, the damage had been done. I don't think there's anything left to fix, Sophia, I said quietly, the finality of my own words hitting me harder than anything she had said. I don't think there's anything left of us to save. There was no response on the other end of the line. For a moment, it felt like we were both suspended in time, waiting for something, anything, that would change the direction we were heading in. But nothing came. Nothing would. The truth was already out in the open, and there was no taking it back. Finally, I spoke again, my voice barely audible. I need to go. She didn't argue, didn't try to stop me. She just whispered a final, "I'm sorry," before I ended the call. I stared at my phone for a few moments before tossing it onto the couch. The weight of what had just happened, the weight of the decision I had just made, settled over me like a dark cloud. But despite the crushing pain in my chest, despite the uncertainty of what came next, I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep living in the past. I couldn't keep clinging to a relationship that had already ended long before the words were spoken. And so, with nothing left to hold me back, I turned and walked out of the door, leaving behind the life I thought I'd have with Sophia, and stepping into a future I wasn't sure I was ready for. I couldn't remember the last time I felt so alone. I walked through the empty streets, the cold wind biting at my skin, but it wasn't the chill in the air that was making me shiver. It was everything inside of me that felt cold, empty. All I had was the haunting silence that followed me everywhere. The weight of the conversation I had just had with Sophia pressed on my chest like a stone, and no matter how many steps I took, I couldn't shake it. I didn't know where I was going, but I kept walking. It wasn't that I was trying to escape. I wasn't running away from my feelings. I think, in a way, I was just trying to put space between me and the life I had built in that apartment. The one that now felt like a distant memory, something that belonged to a different person. I was no longer the person I had been when I walked into that relationship, and the version of Sophia I had known had disappeared, replaced by a woman whose emotions had tangled beyond repair. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a text message. "Sophia." I stared at the screen for a moment before I even considered opening it. Part of me wanted to ignore it entirely, to just let her words sit there, unanswered. But the part of me that still had questions, the part of me that still cared, couldn't resist. I unlocked my phone, and there it was. I never wanted this to happen. I swear, I didn't mean for any of this to fall apart. "I'm so sorry, David. I know I've hurt you, and I can't take it back, but I need you to know that I never wanted to lose you. I love you, and I'll always love you." The words hit me harder than I thought they would. I didn't know how to feel about them. Was she being sincere, or was this just another last-ditch attempt to make herself feel better about what she had done? I wanted to believe her. I really did. The love we shared had been real, or at least I thought it had been. But how could I trust her now? How could I ever look at her the same way after everything she'd told me? The truth that she had been hiding, the love she had allowed to grow for another man. It was like a knife that I couldn't pull out of my chest. I set my phone back in my pocket without replying. I didn't have the words to say to her. I didn't even know where to begin. The next few days passed in a blur. I went through the motions, work, errands, all the things I had to do, but none of it felt real. It felt like I was going through a script, playing a part that didn't belong to me. I found myself thinking about Sophia constantly, wondering if I had done something wrong, wondering if I could have fixed things before it all came to this. But deep down, I knew that no matter how much I blamed myself, I couldn't change what had happened. The distance between us had been growing for a long time. I had been blind to it, but Sophia had known. She had known what she was doing. I avoided going back to the apartment, not wanting to confront the memories. Instead, I stayed with friends, people who knew what had happened but who didn't press me for answers. They let me be. They didn't ask if I was okay or if I was going to call her back. It was like they knew there was nothing to fix, nothing to salvage. One night, about a week later, I found myself in a bar. It wasn't a place I usually went to, but I needed to be somewhere else, anywhere else, than sitting at home, alone with my thoughts. The noise around me, the chatter, the clink of glasses, it all felt so distant, like I was living in a different reality, one that I wasn't sure I belonged in anymore. I didn't expect to see her. I didn't want to. But as I walked toward the bar, there she was, Sophia, sitting at a table in the corner, her face half lit by the dim lighting. She was alone, and for a moment, I wondered if she had been waiting for me. I stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Should I approach her? Should I walk away and pretend I didn't see her? It had been a week since our last conversation, and I hadn't spoken to her since. A part of me still wanted to confront her, to demand more answers. But the other part of me, the part that was tired of the pain, tired of the endless questions, just wanted to forget. She saw me before I could turn away. Her eyes met mine, and I saw that familiar sadness, that look of regret that had never quite left her since the day we had first talked. She hesitated for a moment before standing up, slowly walking over to me. "David," she said, her voice soft, like she was unsure if I wanted to hear it. "I didn't know where else to go. I didn't know if you'd ever want to see me again, but I need to talk. Please, can we just talk?" My pulse quickened as I looked at her. It was as if the moment I had been avoiding had finally arrived. Everything I had been running from was standing right in front of me, waiting for me to make a choice. I could have said no. I could have told her I was done, that there was nothing left to say. But in that moment, I felt the pull of the past, the memories of the love we had shared. I knew I couldn't keep running from this. Not anymore. "Okay," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Let's talk." We sat at a small table in the corner of the bar, the noise around us fading as we focused on each other. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to say, or if there was even anything left to fix. But I couldn't deny the fact that she was still the woman I had once loved, and that part of me, despite everything, still wanted to know what had gone wrong. "I'm sorry for everything, David," she started, her eyes brimming with tears again. "I know I can't take back what I did, and I know I can't make it right. But I need you to know that it wasn't about you. It was never about you. It was about me, about my own confusion, my own inability to face what I was feeling." I leaned back in my chair, trying to process her words, trying to figure out if they meant anything. "You keep saying it wasn't about me," I said quietly. "But it was about me. It was about us. It was about everything I thought we had." She nodded, her gaze dropping to the table. I know, and I hate myself for hurting you. I hate that I didn't see how much I was losing until it was too late. I didn't want to let you go, but I couldn't keep living a lie. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay when it wasn't." The truth of her words hit me like a ton of bricks. Everything we had, everything I had believed in, was a lie, and it hurt more than I had ever imagined. But part of me still felt that old ache, the ache of the love we had shared. And maybe that was the hardest part, knowing that no matter how much I tried to move forward, a part of me would always carry her with me. "You don't have to keep apologizing, Sophia," I said, my voice strained. "I just need you to understand that I can't keep doing this. I can't keep waiting for something that's never coming back. You've made your choice, and I have to make mine." The silence stretched between us, heavy and thick, as we both sat there, lost in our own thoughts. Finally, she reached out, her hand trembling as she placed it on the table between us. "I understand," she whispered. "I understand if you can't forgive me. But I hope, someday you will. I hope that, in time, we can both find peace." I looked at her hand, the same hand that had once held mine in moments of tenderness, now sitting there, offering me nothing but the finality of the moment. I didn't know if I could ever forgive her, or if I even wanted to. But I knew this. No matter how much I tried to let go, the memories would linger. And maybe that was the hardest part of all, to walk away, knowing that love, no matter how real, wasn't always enough to keep two people together. As I stood up to leave, I didn't look back. I didn't have to. I knew that chapter of my life was over. The days that followed weren't easy. The heartache from everything that had transpired lingered like a heavy fog. But slowly, things began to change. For the first time in a long while, I started to realize that life could go on, even after the most painful moments. There was still a future waiting for me, one that didn't include Sophia and the tangled mess of emotions we had built together. But that didn't mean I had to give up on happiness. It wasn't an overnight transformation. Healing doesn't work like that. I had my bad days, days when I found myself thinking about her, about what we could have been, about the life we had tried to build. But there were also moments when I found myself smiling again, when I realized that I could still enjoy the simple things, moments of peace, quiet evenings with friends, the feeling of waking up without the weight of uncertainty hanging over me. I started to spend more time doing the things I loved. I picked up my guitar again, something I hadn't done in ages. Music had always been my escape, but somewhere along the way, I had stopped playing. Now, with each chord I strummed, I began to feel something shift inside me, a quiet, steady resolve. I wasn't broken. I wasn't lost. I was just starting over. One day, about a month later, I found myself sitting in a cafe, the same place where I had once sat with Sophia. It felt different now, lighter. I wasn't stuck in the past anymore. And as I sipped my coffee and watched the world pass by, I realized something. I was finally at peace with what had happened. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad anymore. I had accepted that some chapters end, but that doesn't mean the story is over. There was still so much of life left to experience. I didn't need to wait for someone else to give me validation. I didn't need to be defined by my past mistakes or by a relationship that didn't work out. I was stronger than I had given myself credit for, and I could feel it. There was a quiet confidence growing inside me, the kind that only comes from having faced your fears, your heartbreaks, and walking away stronger on the other side. It was then that I met her. Her name was Lily, and she had a laugh that could fill a room, a lightness about her that was impossible to ignore. We met by accident, or maybe it wasn't an accident at all. She was sitting next to me in the cafe, absorbed in a book, when she accidentally spilled her coffee all over the table. I looked up, ready to help, and there she was, smiling sheepishly. Well, that's one way to make an impression. I chuckled, helping her clean up the mess. We started talking, and somehow, the conversation flowed easily. She wasn't asking me about my past, about who I had been, or what I was running from. She was interested in who I was now, who I was becoming. Over the next few weeks, we continued to meet, to talk, to share moments of laughter, of silence, of genuine connection. She didn't fill a void. She didn't erase the past, but she made me realize that I was capable of loving again, of building something new. I wasn't just moving forward because I had to. I was moving forward because I wanted to. Sophia had taught me valuable lessons. She had shown me what love could look like when it was real, but she had also shown me what love looked like when it became a lie. And in the aftermath of that, I had learned something even more important: how to love myself again, how to trust my instincts, to take a step back, and to know when something wasn't right for me. I had learned that the love I deserved wasn't the kind that left me questioning my worth. It was the kind that lifted me up, that challenged me to be better, to grow, and to never settle for less than what I was truly worth. A few months later, Lily and I stood together at the edge of a cliff, looking out at the horizon, the sun setting in front of us. It felt like the perfect moment, like the world was still wide open, and anything was possible. I knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, that life would continue to throw challenges my way. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt ready. I took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face, the cool wind in my hair, and I realized that everything I had gone through, had led me to this point, to this new beginning. The pain, the heartbreak, the confusion, it had all been part of the journey. And now, standing beside someone who cared about me, who saw me for who I was, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. And with that hope, I knew that no matter what came next, I was going to be okay. Because I had learned how to love again, this time in the right way. And I was finally, truly free.